Have you ever wondered what love looks like after 40 years? Not the kind of love in movies, not the kind that is loud or dramatic, but the quiet kind, the ordinary kind, the kind that wakes up early even when no one is watching. What keeps two people sitting at the same table after 4 decades? What makes them choose each other again on a slow Tuesday morning when the world outside feels busy and impatient? Is it passion? Is it habit? Or is it something softer, something deeper? Every morning at 6:15, before the sun fully rises, before the neighborhood becomes noisy, before the phone begins to ring, we sit across from each other with two simple cups of coffee. No music, no television, just the soft sound of hot water being poured into old ceramic mugs. 40 years ago, we did not imagine this version of ourselves. We were young, impatient, certain that love had to feel exciting all the time. We believed love meant big gestures, surprises, travel, long conversations that lasted until midnight. We did not understand that love would one day become quiet breathing in the same room. We met when I was 22. He was not the most confident man in the room. He did not speak loudly. He did not try to impress anyone, but he listened. When I spoke, he listened as if my words mattered, not just politely, but carefully, as if he wanted to remember them. I did not fall in love in one moment. It was slower than that. It was the way he waited for me after work, even when I was late. It was the way he carried my heavy bag without saying anything. It was the way he said, "Take your time," when I was afraid of making decisions. Back then, we thought love was about finding the right person. Now I know love is about becoming the right person again and again. The first years of marriage were not easy. We argued about small things, money, laundry, who forgot to buy milk. We both wanted to be right. We both wanted to be understood. Sometimes we forgot to understand the other. There were nights when we slept facing opposite walls. There were mornings when the silence felt heavy. But even in those moments, we still made coffee. We still placed two cups on the table. We still sat down. Not because we felt romantic, but because somewhere inside, we knew this was important. Coffee became our pause button, before work, before responsibilities, before the world entered our home. Just 10 minutes, 10 minutes of sitting together. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we did not. Sometimes we were still upset, but we stayed. And staying, I have learned, is a quiet form of love. When our first child was born, everything changed. Sleep disappeared. Patience became thin. We were tired in ways we had never been tired before. We stopped having long conversations. We spoke in short sentences. Did you feed her? Where are the diapers? Can you hold him for a minute? But still, in the early morning, before the baby woke up, we tried to sit together, even if it was only 5 minutes, even if we were half asleep. Sometimes we just leaned back in our chairs and closed our eyes. But our knees touched under the table, and that small touch said, "I am still here." Years passed. Children grew. Bills increased. Hair slowly turned gray. We lost parents. We faced disappointments. There was a year when his business almost failed. I remember that year clearly. He became quieter. He worried constantly. At night, he stared at the ceiling. I wanted to fix everything for him, but I could not. So instead, I kept making coffee every morning. I did not say, "Everything will be fine," because I was not sure. I did not give advice. I simply sat across from him. Some mornings, he did not speak at all. He just held the warm cup with both hands, and I watched him breathe. And I thought, Maybe love is this, not solving the problem, but refusing to leave the table. There was also a year when I felt lost. The children had moved out. The house felt too quiet. For the first time in decades, no one needed me every minute. I did not know who I was without constant responsibility. I felt unnecessary. He noticed. He always notices. One morning, he placed a small notebook next to my cup. He said, "You used to love writing. Maybe you should start again." That was all. He did not push. He did not lecture. He simply remembered who I was before I forgot. We have changed many times in 40 years. We are not the same two people who stood nervously at our wedding. We are softer now, slower, more careful with our words. We have learned that winning an argument is less important than protecting peace. We have learned that apologies should come quickly. That pride is expensive. That silence can heal if it is gentle. Every morning, the coffee tastes slightly different. Some days stronger, some days weaker. Some days we add sugar. Some days we forget. But the routine remains. 2 cups, 2 chairs, one small wooden table with scratches from time. If you saw us from outside, you might think nothing special is happening. No dramatic conversation, no deep discussion about the future. Sometimes we talk about the weather. Sometimes about our neighbor's garden. Sometimes about our aching backs. And sometimes we just sit in comfortable quiet. But inside that quiet, there is history. 40 years of shared memories, hospital waiting rooms, birthday cakes, funerals, road trips, arguments, forgiveness, laughter that made us cry, tears that made us stronger. People often ask, what is the secret to a long marriage? I do not think there is one big secret. There are small decisions, daily ones. To stay, to listen, to soften your voice, to choose kindness when you are tired, to sit down at the table even when you feel distant. Love, after 40 years, does not shout. It does not need attention. It does not try to prove itself. It shows up quietly at 6:15 in the morning with 2 cups of coffee. There are days when we say very little, but our eyes meet, and in that glance, there is understanding. We know each other's moods. We know each other's fears. We know the stories behind the wrinkles. Sometimes I look at him and I see the young man again, the one who waited after work, the one who carried my bag, the one who listened carefully. He looks at me differently now, not with excitement alone, but with recognition, as if he is saying, "We have survived so much together." We do not talk about forever anymore. Forever feels too large. Instead, we talk about tomorrow morning. "See you at coffee," he says before going to bed, and I smile. Because I know, no matter what happens in the world, tomorrow at 6:15, we will sit here again. And maybe that is what love becomes, not a promise of eternity, but a promise of presence, one morning at a time. There were seasons in our marriage when love felt light, and there were seasons when it felt heavy. No one tells you this clearly when you are young. They show you wedding photos, they show you smiles, they show you celebrations. All they do not show you the long afternoons of doubt. About 15 years into our marriage, we went through a quiet distance. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no betrayal, no explosion, just distance. We were busy building a life, working hard, raising children, paying bills, solving problems. We became partners in responsibility, efficient, organized, tired. At night, we talked about schedules, school meetings, deadlines, groceries. We stopped asking, "How are you? Really?" One morning, we sat at the table with our coffee. The silence felt different, not peaceful, not angry, just empty. He looked at his cup. I looked at the window. 10 minutes passed. Neither of us spoke. After he left for work, I stayed at the table longer than usual. I touched the rim of my cup and felt something unfamiliar: loneliness. How can you feel lonely when someone sits across from you? That question stayed with me. For weeks, our mornings continued like that: two cups, two chairs, two quiet people, but no connection. One evening, after dinner, I almost said something. I wanted to say, "I miss you," but the words felt dramatic, too emotional. So I stayed quiet. And silence, when it is afraid, can slowly build walls. A few days later, he came home later than usual. He looked exhausted, not just physically, emotionally. He sat on the edge of the bed and said softly, "Do you think we are okay?" The question surprised me. I thought I was the only one who felt the distance. I sat beside him. For a moment, neither of us knew how to answer. Finally, I said, "I don't know, but I don't want us to become strangers." That night, we did not solve everything. We did not make big promises. We did something smaller. We talked honestly. We admitted we were tired. We admitted we had stopped trying. We admitted we missed each other. The next morning, the coffee tasted the same, but something else changed. He asked, "What are you thinking about these days?" Not about bills, not about the children, about me. It was a simple question, but it opened a door. I told him I felt invisible sometimes. He told me he felt pressure to always be strong. I told him I was afraid we were becoming roommates. He told me he was afraid I no longer needed him. We did not interrupt each other. We listened, the way we used to when we first met. That was the beginning of our second chapter, not younger, not more exciting, but more intentional. We started protecting our mornings again. No phones at the table, no newspapers, just us. Sometimes we shared memories. "Do you remember our first apartment?" he would ask. The tiny kitchen, the broken heater, the cheap curtains. We would laugh. Sometimes we apologized for old arguments, not because they were still painful, but because we finally understood each other better. Love changes shape over time. In the beginning, it is fire, bright, warm, impressive. Later, it becomes something else, like steady light from a lamp, not dramatic, but reliable. There was also the year when his health scared us. It started with small symptoms: fatigue, chest discomfort. He ignored it at first, said it was stress. But one morning, he could not finish his coffee. He pressed his hand to his chest. His face turned pale. Everything after that felt fast and slow at the same time. Hospital lights, machines, doctors speaking in calm voices. I sat in a waiting room holding a paper cup of coffee. It was cold, untouched. I remember thinking, "Please let us sit at our table again. Please let this not be the end of ordinary mornings." He recovered, not quickly, not easily, but he did. And when he finally returned home, we sat at the table the next morning. He held his cup with both hands, just like he did during the year his business almost failed. He looked at me and smiled gently. "I'm still here," he said. Tears filled my eyes. Because in that moment, coffee was no longer just routine. It was proof. Proof that we had another day, another conversation, another chance to choose each other. After that year, we became softer. Arguments ended faster. We said, "I love you" more often, not loudly, not dramatically, just sincerely. And sometimes people assume long marriages survive because the couple never changes. That is not true. We have both changed many times. There were versions of him I had to learn again. There were versions of me he had to understand from the beginning. When I became more independent, he had to adjust. When he became more vulnerable, I had to adjust. We grew, sometimes at different speeds, but we kept walking in the same direction. A few months ago, our granddaughter visited. She woke up early one morning and saw us at a table. She whispered, "Why do you always sit here together?" I smiled. He looked at me as if asking, "Who will answer?" I told her, "Because this is where we remember who we are." She did not fully understand. She is too young, but maybe one day she will. Love is not only the big events. It is not only anniversaries and celebrations. It is daily presence. It is sitting down even when you feel distant. It is asking questions even when you are afraid of the answers. It is staying curious about the person across from you. This morning, like every morning, we sat at the table. The sun moved slowly across the wall. The house was quiet. He reached for the sugar and accidentally spilled a little. We laughed. 40 years together, and he still spills sugar. He looked at me and said, "If we had to do it again, would you choose me?" I pretended to think seriously. I looked at the window. I looked at my cup, then I said, "Yes, but maybe I would argue less." He laughed. "I would listen better," he replied. "We are not perfect. We never were. But perfection was never the goal. Presence was. Tomorrow morning at 6:15, we will sit here again, not because we have to, not because we are afraid to be alone, but because somewhere along the way, we learned something simple. Love does not survive on grand promises. It survives on small, repeated acts. 2 cups, 2 chairs, one shared life, and the quiet decision again and again to stay. There was a time when we almost stopped drinking coffee together, not because we were angry, not because we did not love each other, but because life became too loud. When our children became teenagers, our house changed. Doors closed more often. Voices became sharper. There were disagreements about rules, about freedom, about identity. Some evenings ended in silence, some ended in tears. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were mediators, guides, sometimes the bad people. It is not easy to be united as parents when you are both tired. He was stricter. I was softer. He believed in strong boundaries. I believed in long conversations. There were nights when we argued quietly in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed. "Don't undermine me," he would say. "I'm not undermining you," I would reply. "I'm protecting them." But what we were really protecting was our fear. Fear that we were failing. Fear that we were not enough. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, we sat at the table with heavy eyes. The coffee steamed gently between us. Neither of us had slept well. He looked at me and said, "We cannot fight each other and fight the world at the same time." That sentence stayed with me. We cannot fight each other and fight the world at the same time. And it reminded us that we were on the same side, even when we disagreed, even when we were frustrated, even when we did not fully understand each other. From that morning on, we made a quiet agreement. No matter what happened during the day, no matter what the children said, no matter how stressful work became, we would protect our mornings. It became our strategy meeting, but also our refuge. We did not gossip about the children. We did not criticize. We asked each other, "How can we handle this together?" That word, together, became stronger over the years. There were other storms too. not only inside our home. The world changed. Technology moved fast. Friends divorced. Some relationships around us broke quietly. We attended weddings. We attended funerals. We watched couples who once seemed strong slowly drift apart. Sometimes we asked ourselves, why are we still here? Was it luck? Was it personality? Was it simply that neither of us gave up? Maybe it was all of that. But I think it was also this. We kept returning to the table. There was a winter many years ago when snow covered everything for weeks. The roads were icy, the sky stayed gray. We were both feeling older. Our bodies were slower. Our conversations were slower too. That winter, we started talking about retirement, about what the next chapter might look like. He wanted to travel more. I wanted to stay close to home. He dreamed of new cities. I dreamed of a small garden. For a moment, it felt like we were different again. Different desires, different rhythms, different dreams. I remember stirring my coffee and thinking, are we growing apart or are we simply growing? He noticed my quietness. You're worried, he said gently. About what? I asked. About us not wanting the same things. He was right. I was afraid. After so many years, the idea of wanting different futures felt dangerous. But then he said something simple. Maybe we don't have to want the exact same picture. Maybe we just have to stay in the same frame. The same frame. It was such a gentle image. We can travel and still return home. We can plant a garden and still explore the world. We do not have to choose one dream. We can take turns. We can compromise. We can expand the frame. Love at this stage is less about control and more about flexibility, less about being right and more about being kind. There are mornings now when we talk about our younger selves. We smile at our mistakes. We forgive our impatience. We see how much we have both grown. Sometimes he reaches across the table and takes my hand. The skin is thinner now, veins more visible, but the touch feels familiar, safe. There is a different kind of attraction now, not the quick heartbeat of youth, but a deep comfort, a knowing, a shared language built over decades. We finish each other's sentences. In not because we are predictable, but because we have listened for so long. There was a moment recently when I realized something important. We were sitting at the table, as always. Sunlight came through the window and landed softly on his face. I suddenly saw the lines near his eyes, the gray in his hair, the slight bend in his shoulders, and I felt a wave of tenderness. Time is moving, quietly, without asking permission. One day, one of us will sit at this table alone. And that thought does not scare me as much as it used to. It makes me grateful. Grateful for ordinary mornings, for imperfect conversations, for spilled sugar, for shared silence. If love were only passion, it would not survive 40 years. If love were only convenience, it would not survive disappointment. But love, when it becomes daily presence, can endure almost anything. We do not promise forever anymore. We promise tomorrow morning. We promise to sit down, to pour coffee, to look at each other, to ask, how are you, really? Some mornings, the answer is simple. I'm fine. Other mornings, the answer is longer. I'm worried about my health. I'm thinking about our children. I'm remembering my parents. We listen, not to fix, not to judge, but to understand. That is something we did not know how to do in our first years. We thought love meant solving everything. Now we know love often means witnessing everything, the good, the painful, the uncertain. After 40 years, we still discover new things about each other, new fears, new hopes, new memories. And every morning, as the coffee cools slowly in our cups, I realize something simple and profound. Love is not a single story. It is thousands of small mornings woven together. It is not built in one grand moment. It is built in repetition, in patience, in returning. Tomorrow at 6:15, we will sit here again. Not because we are perfect, not because we never struggled, but because through every season, every argument, every illness, every doubt, we chose to stay in the same frame. Two cups, two chairs, one shared history, and a quiet, steady love that still wakes up early. There is something no one prepares you for after 40 years of marriage. It is not conflict. It is not boredom. It is the realization that time feels different. When we were young, 40 years sounded impossible, too far away, too abstract. Now, 40 years feel like a single breath that somehow lasted decades. Recently, we began clearing old boxes from the attic, photographs, letters, birthday cards written in messy handwriting, receipts from our first refrigerator, tiny shoes that once belonged to our children. We carried the boxes downstairs and placed them near the table. That morning, instead of talking about the weather, we opened the past. He found a photo from our honeymoon. We looked so young, so certain, so unaware of what life would ask from us. "Look at your hair," he said, smiling. "Look at your confidence," I replied. We laughed, but beneath the laughter was something tender. We did not know that love would require so much patience, so much forgiveness, so much courage. One photo showed us in our 30s. The children were small. We looked tired but proud. That was a difficult time. We had very little money. Sometimes we worried quietly at night about how to pay for school supplies, but we never told the children. We protected their sense of safety. In those years, coffee in the morning was sometimes rushed. We drank it quickly, standing up, preparing lunches, searching for missing shoes. But even in that chaos, we found each other's eyes, and that look said, "We are in this together." As we sorted through the box, he found an old letter. It was from a time when he had to travel for work for almost 6 months. We did not have video calls then, only long-distance phone calls that were expensive and short. So we wrote letters, real letters, ink on paper. I read the words he had written decades ago. "I miss our mornings," the letter said. "I miss sitting across from you with coffee. When I come home, that's the first thing I want to do." I did not remember that sentence, but reading it now, I felt tears in my eyes. Even back then, before gray hair, before grandchildren, before health scares, he understood the value of our mornings. Sometimes love is not about discovering new rituals. It is about protecting old ones. Later that afternoon, after the boxes were put away, we sat at the table again. The house felt fuller, as if the past had quietly joined us. He looked thoughtful. "Do you ever regret anything?" he asked. It was not a heavy question. It was gentle, honest. I considered it carefully. "A yes," I said. "I regret the times I was impatient with you, the times I chose pride instead of softness." He nodded slowly. "I regret the times I worked too much, the times I thought providing was enough, when you really needed presence." There was no accusation in our voices, only reflection. Time gives you perspective. You begin to see your younger self with compassion. We did the best we could with the understanding we had, and somehow, through mistakes and misunderstandings, we kept returning to the table. In recent years, our mornings have become slower. We wake up earlier than necessary. Our bodies no longer allow us to sleep late. The house is quiet in a different way now. Not the quiet of busy children sleeping, but the quiet of completion. Our responsibilities feel lighter. Our conversations feel deeper. We talk about small joys, the bird that visits the garden, the way sunlight falls differently in autumn, the taste of coffee when it is brewed just right. But sometimes we also talk about fear, about aging, about the uncertainty of health, about the reality that one day, one chair may be empty. We do not avoid that truth anymore. Instead, we hold it gently between us. One morning, I asked him, "Are you afraid?" He took a long breath. "Yes," he said, "but not of loving you. I'm only afraid of leaving you alone." His honesty touched me deeply. I reached across the table and held his hand. "We cannot control time," I said, "but we can control this moment." That is what our mornings have become, a quiet rebellion against time, a declaration that today matters, that presence matters, that this simple act of sitting together is not small at all. Friends sometimes tell us they admire our routine. They call it romantic. I smile when they say that, because romance at this stage is not candles or music. It is consistency. And it is waking up and choosing to show up, even when you feel tired, even when you disagree, even when life feels uncertain. Last week it rained heavily. The sky was dark. Thunder echoed softly in the distance. We sat with our coffee, watching the rain slide down the window. He said quietly, "If we had not protected these mornings, I think we would have lost something important." I knew exactly what he meant. Without this space, life would have swallowed us. Work would have swallowed us. Parenting would have swallowed us. Worry would have swallowed us. But these small, repeated pauses kept us connected. They reminded us that beneath roles and responsibilities, we were simply two people who once chose each other and kept choosing. As we move further into this chapter, I feel a deeper gratitude, not for perfection, not for an easy life, but for endurance, for growth, for quiet loyalty. Tomorrow morning, we will sit here again. The cups may shake slightly in our hands, the conversation may be simple, the world outside may continue rushing, but inside our kitchen at 6:15, there will be stillness. Two chairs, two cups, 40 years of history resting gently between us, and the quiet understanding that love is not something you feel once. It is something you practice every single morning. This morning felt different, not because anything dramatic happened, not because there was big news, but because we both knew we were about to celebrate 40 years, 40 years of marriage, 40 years of shared mornings, 40 years of choosing the same chair, the same table, the same person. We did not plan a large party, no grand celebration, no expensive trip. Instead, we decided to do what we have always done: wake up early, make coffee, sit down together. When I walked into the kitchen, he was already there. He had placed a small flower in a glass near my cup. Nothing fancy, just something simple from the garden. "I thought the table deserved something special today," he said. I smiled. After 40 years, romance looks like this: thoughtful, quiet, intentional. We sat down. The sunlight entered the room softly, as if it also wanted to be gentle with us. For a few minutes, we said nothing. Not because we had nothing to say, but because the silence felt full, full of memory, full of gratitude, full of all the mornings before this one. Do you remember our first year? He asked. Yes, I said. We thought love would solve everything. He laughed softly. We had no idea what love actually required. We began remembering out loud the tiny apartment, the broken car, the arguments about money, the fear of becoming parents, the sleepless nights, the small victories, the first time we felt truly understood by each other. We also remembered the painful things, the words we wished we had not said, the moments when distance felt real, the times we almost allowed pride to win. But somehow, in every memory, there was a thread. We never stopped returning to the table, even when we were upset, even when we were tired, even when we did not know how to fix what was broken, we returned. That was our quiet promise, not perfection, not constant happiness, just return. After a while, he looked at me with the softness that only time can create. If you had the chance to live your life again, he asked, would you choose the same path? I did not answer immediately because the question deserved honesty. Life with him was not always easy. It demanded patience, compromise, growth, but it also gave me something rare: stability, partnership, a witness to my entire adult life. Yes, I said finally, I would choose you again, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. He reached for my hand. His grip is not as strong as it used to be, but it is steady. I would choose you again too, he said, even knowing the hard parts. There is something powerful about loving someone after you have seen them at their worst, after you have seen their fear, their anger, their weakness, and they have seen yours. Love becomes less about illusion and more about acceptance. We do not try to impress each other anymore. We do not try to appear stronger than we are. If one of us feels afraid, we say it. If one of us feels tired, we admit it. If one of us makes a mistake, we apologize faster. Because at this stage, we understand something important. Time is precious. Pride is not. Later in the morning, our children called to congratulate us. Our grandchildren sent short video messages. They see us as the couple who always drinks coffee together. They think it is sweet, maybe even simple, but they do not see what it represents. Those cups have witnessed everything: grief, joy, uncertainty, hope. Those cups have been held by shaking hands, by tired hands, by hands that once held babies, by hands that now hold each other more carefully. 40 years ago, I thought love was about finding someone who makes your heart race. Now I know love is about finding someone who makes your heart steady, someone who sits with you when life becomes confusing, someone who listens when your voice trembles, someone who remembers who you are when you forget. This afternoon, we will continue our day like any other. We will water the plants. We will go for a short walk. We will prepare dinner, nothing extraordinary. But tomorrow morning, we will wake up again. At 6:15, we will walk into the kitchen. We will prepare 2 cups, and we will sit down. Because in the end, it was never about the coffee. It was about presence, about choosing each other again and again. If you are listening to this, maybe you are young. Maybe you are newly in love. Maybe you are in the middle of difficulty. Or maybe you are sitting alone, wondering if long love is even possible. I cannot promise that it will be easy. It will not. There will be seasons of doubt, seasons of frustration, seasons when you question everything. But if you can learn to return, to sit down, to listen, to soften, to forgive, To stay curious about the person across from you, then love can grow deeper than excitement. It can grow roots. And roots, though invisible, are what keep something alive. Tomorrow morning, when we sit together again, I will look at him and silently thank him for staying, for trying, for choosing me even when I was not easy to choose. 40 years of marriage is not a fairy tale. It is not magic. It is daily effort wrapped in ordinary moments. 2 cups, 2 chairs, a lifetime of shared mornings, and a quiet promise that as long as we both wake up, we will meet each other here. Thank you for listening gently to this story. If it touched your heart, take a moment tomorrow morning, with your partner, with a friend, or even alone, and sit still with a warm cup in your hands. Breathe, be present, and remember, love does not have to be loud to be lasting.